Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Dan Clark, who's a Hall of Fame speaker and New York Times best-selling author of 37 books and a master storyteller. Dan, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Mike. You're a legend. It's an honor to be with you.
Oh, you're the legend, and we're not going to talk about all 37 books because that would give us about 9 days worth of content, but wow, what a body of work that is just in that one little piece, and I know we've got so much more to talk about, but I want to just dive into this concept here of, like the drive to success. What drives you? And from your background, give us a little bit of your story and what has your entrepreneurial journey been like to this point in your career. And I always emphasize the word this point because I don't care how old you are, you could be 70, 80, 90, 100, and you might have 15 or 20 more years of journey and building and growing. So with that thought in mind, what's your entrepreneurial journey been like to this point in your career?
I want to amalgamate answers to kind of the three questions and end with what drives me because it all is relevant in my life. I believe that entrepreneurs, when you meet a serial entrepreneur, they want to fix things. They just have an inherent ability, to look at things not for what they are, but for what they have the power to become. They can make it better. And I suppose my entire life as an athlete, I was clearly a serial entrepreneur because I was always trying to figure out a way to tweak my running style, to eliminate wasted motion so I could be faster, how to increase my leap, my vertical, how to become a better football player, a better basketball, a better baseball player. I've always, searched and sought excellence in everything I do, believing that the only person you need to be better than is the person you were yesterday. That's how I was raised. No matter what your past has been, you have a spotless future. And so I've always been fired up about becoming the very best version of myself. And yet I relegated myself into being an athlete. I thought that's who I was. And that's how I got all of my attention, all my fame and glory. And I was playing football and baseball at the University of Utah, as a student athlete, a scholarship athlete. I was a projected number 1 draft pick by the Oakland Raiders into the National Football League. I'd had an invitation tryout by the Kansas City Royals out of high school as a baseball pitcher. So my entire identity was I am an athlete. And that's all I thought I was. That's who I thought I was. And all of a sudden, one day in practice, the coach blew a whistle and another player and I ran full speed into each other in a violent head-on collision, smashing my right shoulder into the cutting edge of my fiberglass pads, and we slammed to the ground. And when Lyle got off of me, I had compressed the 7 cervical vertebrae in my neck. I had severed the axillary nerve in my right deltoid muscle, and I'd suffered a grade level 2 concussion, which is one of the worst kinds of concussions you have. I was in such bad shape. My eye drooped. I had loss of speech. I couldn't talk anymore, which momentarily returned. My right side was paralyzed, and my right arm dangled helplessly at my side. And it left me paralyzed for 14 months, Mike. I went to 16 doctors, 15 of whom told me I would never get any better. I would never recover. And I wonder how many folks listening have heard that in your life. And what happens if you believe it? You never get any better. And my life spiraled downward until I hit what I thought was rock bottom. And now that I fought my way back to a 95% recovery, the most frequently asked questions are these, which are answers to your question, Mike. What do I mean? I thought I hit rock bottom. If our listeners today remember nothing else I say, please remember, no matter how tough times get, no matter how hard things are, nobody ever hits rock bottom. We hit rock foundation. We hit rock belief. We hit the baseline core values and governing principles on which we were raised. And the other frequently asked question is, why did I keep going to so many different doctors? And the answer is I kept going from doctor to doctor until I found one who believed I would get better. And then the last two questions are these. Why did I stay paralyzed for 14 months? Why did I stay paralyzed for so long? And the answer is I was asking the wrong questions. I was asking the doctors how to get better when I should have been asking myself why. And once we answer why, figuring out the how to becomes clear and simple. And the last question answers your question about what drove me, what drives me. When I started to get better, I was asked to speak to a high school football team. I spoke before 7 of their 8 games. They won the state championship. The high school principal invited me to come and speak to the student body. He called 4 friends. I spoke at 5 schools that year, 13 schools the next year. And then I got a contract to speak to every high school and junior high in the state of Utah. And after I had spoken to 170 schools, finally tweaking my storytelling and my message of resilience, Zig Ziglar played a major role in my recovery, because when I was down, when my wheels fell off my wagon, when I lost my identity, I was truly suicidal. I was an athlete, and I didn't realize that playing football was just what I did, not who I am as a man. And when we identify ourselves in terms of what we do instead of who we are, we become human doings instead of human beings. Yeah. Unacceptable if significance is what we seek. So Zig comes rolling into town to speak on one of the big stages in the arena on a PMA rally. And I positioned myself backstage so that when he was over, I could just basically say, Zig, you saved my life. Can I take you to dinner? He said, I'm coming back to Salt Lake City in 3 weeks. Call Lori Majors in my office, see what we can work out. He allowed me to pick him up at the airport. I took him to the hotel in a 15-minute drive. And there he said, is there someplace I can see your high school assembly? And I'd already rented a little room off the foyer, had a little slideshow and some stuff. I gave him my 45-minute speech. He stood up, tears in his eyes, tears in my eyes, mano a mano, gave me a standing ovation. Next week, he flew me down to Dallas, Texas to speak to his corporation. Next week, he sponsored me in the National Speakers Association. Met him in Chicago for 6 days. Next week, he invited my wife and I at newlyweds down to Dallas to his 5-day Born to Win seminar, which changed our lives forever. And it was there that he introduced me to somebody who introduced me to Nancy Reagan, who invited me into the Reagan White House to take Mrs. Reagan's Just Say No program to all 50 states. So between 1983 and 1989, I spoke to 3 high schools every day, 15 a week for 140 school days a year, and then did 100 college university campuses every year, transitioned into the corporate arena in about 1991, and 6,000 speeches in 77 countries later, inducted into the National or the Professional Speakers Hall of Fame. It was all because of 6 degrees of separation. And trying to figure out a way to just become whole again. Instead of chasing fame and fortune, I knew I had to focus in on purpose and being whole. And then the last question that you asked me, what drives me to keep doing this after all these years of 40-plus year career, still at the top of my game, speaking 80 times a year to the major Fortune 100 companies in the world, is, Mike, I believe in my heart of hearts that there is one man and one woman in every single one of my audiences who is hurting as badly as I was. Mm-hmm. I lost my identity. And if there's something I could say that would keep someone from killing themselves, taking their life, if there's something I could say that would save a marriage, that would kickstart someone's entrepreneurial $1 million idea and just fire them up to never say never, it's worth it to me. And proudly, I've never missed a speech in all these years. And sometimes my flights have been canceled, but I've rented a car. One time I drove 7 hours through the Badlands of Nebraska to show up in Rapid City, South Dakota in time to be the closing speaker of a 3-day conference. And I was the only speaker who showed up because of inclement weather. never forgotten that. I'm not trying to suggest I'm more noble. I just know that this isn't just a job for me. It's a calling to change the world one story at a time. And I'm so grateful for the privilege of the platform that has allowed me to do what I do on a daily basis. Long answer, brother. Now you're afraid to ask me.
Well, I was going to say, Dan, we could unpack that for about the next hour, but a couple things jumped out at me. You mentioned 6 degrees of separation, and you mentioned Zig Ziglar. And the thing that I would like to say is, I would say to you that there would be someone out there that may have a Zig Ziglar type of an introduction that they do not take action on. So yes, you connected with him, who then connected you with, and there was those 6 degrees of separation. But talk a little bit about what it is in your life that led you to that realization that there are opportunities in front of me, and I'm not going so fast, 100 miles an hour, that I'm going to miss out on them. I'm going to notice this. I'm going to take action. I'm going to show gratitude. And if you came off as a cocky young person to Zig Ziglar, he would have patted you on the head and said, "Hey, nice to meet you." Next. But somehow, some way, you made that connection and you look to take it to the next level. So I just think that there's opportunity all around every one of us, but we tend to keep our eyes glued to the wrong thing and structure our day's schedule so much that we don't have a moment's notice to be aware of these opportunities to then take proper advantage of that. What do you say to someone about that?
Well, Mike, the reason why you're legendary, you ask such good, evocative questions. I love you already, brother. I honor you. I've taught public speaking for 11 years at the university level in the MBA programs. And I teach my students the fundamentals of communication, the fundamentals of entrepreneurship, the fundamentals of life. Number one, seek to bless, not impress. Yeah. So in a public speaking setting, I ask people, if you're nervous before you speak, it means you think it's about you. But if you're excited before you speak, you know it's about them. So if I rise to the occasion, refuse to lose, and connect with my audience, and my audience members leave impressed with me, I've completely blown it. But if they leave impressed with themselves, empowered that they can do what I say they can do, that they can do at least what I've done, then I've connected, I've empowered them. So when we go to networking events, Mike, most of the time, notice, I challenge everybody listening in the sound of our voices to just pay attention. Most people who come to a networking event, a mastermind, whatever you want to call it, they come with a personal agenda and a pocket full of business cards with the mindset of, what can you do for me?
What's in it for me? Yep.
Exactly. And what I've learned a long time ago, which you're famous for too, Mike, is that when we have a service before self mindset, we turn every sales pitch into a serve pitch. And when we come with the attitude, how may I serve you? What can I possibly do to help you heal, to help you become better today than you were yesterday? It's more than a cliche to say that if you're hurting, all you have to do is find another person who is hurting and help them, and 2 people are healed.
Yeah.
So, your question and your commentary is so profound, because when we go into any situation, 1-on-1, 1-on-20, 1-on-200, 1-on-20,000 in an arena, you can see my photos on my website, danclark.com, to see how I used to speak at all the huge arenas to 30, 40,000 folks, still do. When you have an attitude of gratitude and you come with, oh my gosh, how may I serve you? How can I open up my Rolodex? Boy, that's a word from the past, brother. How can I open up my circle of influence to connect you with someone who might help you heal, who might help you take you to the next level? And what goes around comes around. And I really believe that if you just have a simple service before self mindset, it's amazing how the law of psychological reciprocity validates itself on a daily basis, where when you serve, when you listen, when you ask questions, and you try to figure out how you can help someone else, it creates a moral obligation in a conversation. If I have made you feel wanted, important, lovable, capable, and that you can succeed, It's created a moral obligation for you to make me feel equally wanted, important, lovable, capable, and that I can succeed before that conversation or that interaction ends, with the mindset that when the water in the lake goes up, all the boats rise together. So I think of every, I'm sitting here in my library, and we laughed before we came on air. This is my I Love Me room. It's my man cave. But I've flown every single fighter jet, all the bombers. We heard about the B-2 bomber, the 37-hour nonstop flight when we went into Iran. I've flown that B-2 bomber out of Whiteman Air Force Base. I've been up into space for 5 hours, sitting in the sounds of silence, looking at the breathtaking curvature of the earth, gazing into the endless blackness of the universe, pondering eternity in my place. And I've had these extraordinary experiences, and I'm a civilian.
Yeah.
And everybody says, oh my gosh, even those, my military friends, my 4-star generals, I was a Pentagon appointee for 5.5 years, and now I serve on the board of visitors of the Air Force Academy. All of my military friends and colleagues, especially those pilots, those fighter pilots and bomber pilots, they ask me, how have I had more time in every aircraft, more seat time and experience than they've had, and I'm a civilian. And the answer is I've given over 350 free speeches to the military. And when the 4-star general knows I have volunteered my time and whatever talent I have time and time again to fire up our troops, to address the serious issues of suicide, of divorce, of sexual harassment, assault, of strength through diversity, all the key issues that I love to talk about and address with our troops. And they know I've volunteered my time and have never charged them one dime in a speaker's honorarium. Eventually they say, Dan, what can we do for you? And I'm like, I want to fly an F-18. I want to do exactly what Tom Cruise did in Top Gun Maverick. And I've flown that exact same fighter jet, done all the things you saw in Top Gun Maverick. I hope people listening have watched the movie more than 10 times like me. So I'm sitting here in my library looking at all these photographs. I served on the Olympic Committee, Winter Olympics in 2002, and I carried the Olympic torches right behind me on my shelf. It's all because of service before self. How can I serve my fellow men and women? What can I do for you? And eventually what goes around comes around.
One thing that you said that makes me think of another question, which is this. Back in the day when you were growing and building your network and getting that first speaking gig and that second speaking gig, you mentioned rock bottom. No one ever hits rock bottom, but at some point you were low and then you took a step forward and then another step forward. And before you had all of the accolades, there were those times I'm confident of that it was not the hockey stick trajectory of, hey, this year I did 497 talks and then the next year even more. When you were on that climb, what can you remember were maybe a failure or a hurdle or a hiccup or a speed bump, whatever you want to think of it, where you experience like, ooh, that was a failure. I didn't do everything right, and I'm going to need to now go back and assess and tweak. So I think that too many times we all think that, oh, look at the entrepreneur of the speaker's success. I went from ground zero to, excellence in 3 years and never had anything negative happen. Talk a little bit about a couple of the failures or breakdowns you experienced.
You're so good. I'm just smiling going, do you have like 5 hours, bro?
I probably do.
What's so real about life is that we need to be willing to fail our way to success.
Yeah.
And if we woke up every morning and said life is hard, it changes our whole attitude. It changes our whole day. So that when we get down and when we get knocked down, we don't stay down. We understand that you never lose if you always learn. So the answer, I'll just make it a really quick answer because it's such a great question that everybody on this call can relate to. When I teach my classes in public speaking, and I have my course Speak Like a Pro or Story Selling, I remind everybody that we have to be ordinary before we're extraordinary, that people don't give a rat's wackazoodle if I've ever succeeded. They want to know, Clark, did you ever fail? Did you ever fall down? And then what did you do about it? So you'll never meet a strong person with a weak past. Pain is a signal to grow, not to suffer. Once we learn the lesson the pain is teaching us, the pain goes away. So in life, there's no mistakes, only lessons. So one of my favorite quotes that will tee up my answer is that under pressure, I learned this from Navy SEALs sitting around a bonfire in Iraq and Afghanistan the first time I went back in 2005. Under pressure, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to your level of training. That's why we train and prepare and practice so hard. So the reality is pressure is not something that's naturally there. It's created when you question your own ability. And when you know what you've been trained to do, there's never any pressure. So in that mindset, what we have to do is understand that failure is a blessing if we learn from it.
Yeah.
And if we can all, embrace the mindset of a champion athlete who walks into a gym, who walks into a weight room with the primary purpose and intention to create discomfort on purpose, we will accelerate our growth and become better today than we were yesterday, every single day, guaranteed. Because when an athlete goes into a gym, we put more weight on the bar today than we had on it yesterday. On purpose, we're creating discomfort. We spend one more minute on the pre-core or on the elliptical than we did the day before. The brain damage that occurs in most people is when we go into the gym, when we go into hot yoga, core power, and it's 100 plus degrees and we're sweating and we're stretching and we're pushing ourselves to our ultimate capacity and potential as a human being. The reality is most people who go into a gym or into a yoga studio with the intention to create discomfort and do something hard that they really don't want to do, but they do it anyway, the brain damage occurs when we exit and we expect life to be cushy. We want princess parking in every mall. We want a sale in every store. We want 90-degree weather with the breeze blowing over our right shoulder out of Malibu Canyon. And that's not reality. So I needed to put that preamble in, Mike, so people listening can make sure that they don't just let discomfort happen, but we create a culture of resilience where we make discomfort happen. Where we
I'm going to throw in something right here, Dan, because it just came to my mind, and it just makes your point exactly right. We should not run from discomfort because of what you're saying. But here's an example I've heard many, many times. And you've probably heard this before, but there's this little boy that was watching this moth try to get out of the cocoon, and it was struggling and struggling. So he reached down and opened it up and helped it, and the moth died. Why? Because the moth or the butterfly needs to have that struggle to get out on its own to energize the muscles to get the blood flowing so that the wings work. The minute you help it out and break it open, all of a sudden it didn't have that struggle, that tension, and now it dies. So we need to have that struggle so that we can rise. And the same analogy too of, like you mentioned, flying airplanes. Well, don't you know that you fly into the headwind so that you lift up? You don't run away from the headwind.
I love it. Yep. Brilliant. And you know what? I'm an old man and a professional speaker, and I've never heard that moth story. Good for you.
Oh, okay. Well, Google it. You'll probably get a better example of it, but it's the same. The concept is there. I think that is just powerful. So let's think about something here. During the challenges that you experienced throughout your career, how did faith play a role in you facing them and overcoming them?
Another great question, Mike. So both faith and fear demand that we believe in something we can't see.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's always a choice. And we all know that faith cannot exist in fear and fear cannot exist in faith. We have to be willing to separate the two. However, most people confuse faith with belief. Faith without works is not faith at all. And what happens is most of us try to interface faith with hope, thinking that they're exactly the same, and they're not. French philosopher Pascal, he said, hope is very interesting. He said, too many people live their lives hoping to be happy, but because they only hope, they never really are. My 2 cents, it's like somebody's waiting for someone to ask them to the senior prom and they've never even taken the time to learn how to dance.
Yeah.
So we hear our whole entire lives as men of faith, have faith and pray. Pray always and be believing. Have faith, have faith. At some point, we've got to get up off our knees and stop praying. Keep that prayer in our heart. Stop praying and do everything in our power to help God answer our prayers, because when we pray to God, God answers our prayers through other people. It takes us full circle to service before self. So let me just give you a couple of analogies. If you and I are in a car and we pull into a McDonald's drive-thru and we order a Big Mac fries and a Diet Coke, and we pull over into the parking lot, and we being men of faith, you say, Mike, I say, you say, Dan, could you offer a little blessing on the food? And I say, dear Lord, please bless this food that it will strengthen, nourish our bodies, and do us the good we need. That ain't never going to happen. God will not be mocked. If we're leading a youth group and we meet in the church parking lot and we're going to have a caravan a couple hours down the road to some campsite, and you as a church leader say, Dan, could you offer a prayer for safety? And I say, dear Lord, bless us that we will arrive safely, that no harm or accident will befall us. And then we get in our vehicles and drive 100 miles an hour without wearing our seatbelts. That ain't never going to happen. God will not be mocked. So I have a slogan that I keep in my wallet: pray as though everything depends on God, and work as though everything depends on you.
Yep. Yeah.
Because too many people in the born again world, they believe they're saved, but they don't understand the journey of discipleship. They think, okay, I've made it. I got my ticket into the stadium. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't want a ticket into the stadium. If I'm a spectator, that's the most boring thing on the planet when I'm an able athlete. I want to freaking play on the field. I want to be on the winning team. I want to make sure that I know the fundamentals and I can make everybody else around me better so that we do win. And in the ecclesiastical world and as men of faith, the ultimate victory is heaven. Why in the world would we just want to watch other people play when we have an opportunity to serve others and step it up as a calling instead of just a job, and not just exist, but survive? No, thrive as literal sons and daughters of Almighty God. So faith plays such a role in my life, because if we are lazy, if we're living off the government, if we're just taking life so easy, we are offending God. We have been hardwired to progress, and the happiest people on this world are those who are happier today than they were yesterday through serving others. So faith is huge to me, but I pray every morning and I pray every night, and my prayers are not, when we get in the family car back in the day when my children were still at home, and when we'd go on a family vacation, maybe drive the 12 hours to Los Angeles from Salt Lake City, Utah, say, we're going to offer a prayer. I could not, as a dad, as a man of faith, I could not pray that we would arrive safely. I prayed that I would make responsible decisions that would allow us to arrive safely because of what I was able to throw into the mix. So our children, when they would leave, we could pray all we wanted to that they would make responsible decisions, and our girls wouldn't come home from a date pregnant. What they needed to understand is that faith is action. I can have all the faith in the world that I'm going to lose weight, and if I just keep eating donuts, it ain't never going to happen.
Yep.
I can believe and I can hope that my flight's going to leave today on time and on Delta Airlines and fly me to Cincinnati. But unless I get in my car and be responsible enough to plan ahead in case there's traffic or an accident, unless I do my part, hope and faith do not play any role in my life unless I'm willing to do whatever I can possibly do to do my part. Does that make sense?
It totally does. And I'll make this little bookend comment to that statement, which, like faith without works is dead, not faith unto salvation. But, we are so grateful for that salvation. We must do the good works. And like the parable of the talents, guess what? The steward that used the talent and 10x them got accolades. The one that put it in the ground and said, "Hey, I kept your talents, your money safe," that person got derided. He should have put it in the bank, at least got some interest. But we need to be faithful and use our knowledge, our energy, our experience, and amplify what we've been given so that it has that ripple effect in the world. So I think you're just spot on. And I know that we didn't go through 17 different failures or whatnot, but in your past, would you do anything differently given the chance?
You're such a great interviewer. You know what, to be honest with you, I think we're the sum total of our experiences. I wouldn't be talking to you if I wasn't paralyzed, which means my paralysis is one of the best things that ever happened to me. Don't misunderstand. Mm-hmm. Not my paralysis, but who I became because of it.
Yeah.
And so, I battled throat cancer when I was 8. I was hurt in the third game of my senior year in high school. I thought I was going to lose all my scholarships. I almost died in the hospital with COVID. 7.5 days. I was 30 minutes away from being intubated, stopped breathing. I have all these experiences, and everything that happens in our life, Mike, is to give us experience.
Yeah.
I happen to believe that when we die, this is just Dan Clark 6:2, but when we die, we don't lose our memory. And for some reason, I think that there's going to be community on the other side of the veil where we can use our character, where we can use our leadership styles, our skills. For some reason, I really believe that the education, the character, the life experiences that we had in mortality will rise with us in the resurrection. And nobody has to agree with me, but that motivates me to understand the significance of living life on the edge. And sometimes the biggest mistake someone will make in their lives, Mike, is living their lives being afraid that they will make a mistake. Mm-hmm. So I say, just get up and go again and fire up every single day. And if you fail, good for you. Remember, in baseball, if you strike out 7 out of 10 times, you're still a superstar.
Yep. And it's like you said, you alluded to earlier, you either win or and people go, lose. Nope. You win or you learn. And I think that's a quality that many people don't latch onto. So in your opinion, what are some of the key attributes that people need to manage in their life so that they can face and overcome some of these unforeseen issues that they come across in their lives? So we've mentioned several of them, resilience, but what are, the top 1 or 2 that you've seen that people really need to latch onto?
Yeah, we need to manage the myth of rejection. So if you're in sales and someone says no, they're not saying no to you. Mm-hmm. So when you're true to your values, when you know your core values, when you know your purpose and meaning, and someone says no or the plan doesn't work, you never change your core values. You just change the plan. It's like sailing a boat. You change the sails depending on the direction of the wind. Mm. So we need to manage the myth of rejection. In the context of a master plan, there's a master organizer, and I want to make sure I testify that there really is a God who created us. And because of that, the number one law of the universe is obedience. And the greatest gift of heaven is free will agency. So we can choose yes or no, do this or do that. And to protect and guarantee that we always had our free will agency, God gave us an opposition in all things. We have to have darkness to appreciate the light. We have to have sickness to appreciate health. We have to have justice to appreciate mercy. We have to have death to appreciate life. And because God knew we were going to be tempted with an opposition in all things and given our free will agency, he instilled in every human being, every born onto this planet, an inherent ability to discern right from wrong, truth from error. And we commonly call this ability our conscience. And if this is true, which I believe it is, our conscience will never fail us. Only our desire to follow it decreases as we continue to do the wrong thing. So the best example is if everyone on this call, if everyone on this podcast, if everyone on this broadcast was somehow in the same ballroom and we exited the ballroom together and entered a different room together, and that room stunk so badly, it was so rank and so repulsive that our eyes started to water, our noses started to bleed. It threw us into a gag reflex. Do you realize if we stayed in that smelly, stinky room for only 5 minutes, it would no longer smell? We had
because you acclimate.
We had become desensitized, and it was now the new normal. How many times does that happen on our daily basis? Which means that we've got to believe what Jim Rohn taught the world, that we become the average of the 5 people we associate with the most, which means we must be willing to pay any price and travel any distance to associate with extraordinary human beings, even online, even in this broadcast, Mr. Saunders. So I honor you. I'm going to have to jump off right now. I talked way too long. You've got a list of questions. I took way too long to answer them. I hope you'll have me back. You fascinate me. I love you. I honor your wisdom and your success and your reputation. So I hope you'll have me back, brother.
Of course. Well, let's wrap up with how can people learn more and connect with you?
Just go to danclark360.com. And when you pull that up on your cell phone or on your computer, type in danclark360.com, and a screen's going to pop up that gives you an opportunity to get in touch with me on your terms any way you want. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, my website, my email, blah, blah, blah. But more importantly, at the top of that screen, there's a little click button that says send text. If you'll push on that button right now as you're listening to this, and it will give you an opportunity to give me your full name, and then write in there Mike Saunders so I know why and where we met, and then give me your very best email. And my team will email you a free gift, either 3 videos on my flagship book, The Art of Significance, Achieving the Level Beyond Success, or a free download of one of my books. We'll decide. But I hope you'll keep in touch. My website to snoop around is danclark.com. But I would really hope that you'll keep in touch with me immediately so that we can start keeping this relationship alive and then hopefully join face-to-face, belly-to-belly at some point down the road when Mike Saunders decides to host live events. Because
hey, there we go.
Come on, baby.
Well, Dan, you're the man, the myth, the legend. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a true honor chatting with you today.
Thank you so much, Mike. God bless you. Thanks for the questions. You're amazing.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.